The night I became the villain in my ex-girlfriend's family story, I was holding a bouquet I hadn't paid for, wearing a suit I hated, and asking her mother if she wanted to make a terrible decision with me. I'm Daniel Hayes, 34 years old, and until that night, my life was aggressively normal. I designed restaurant interiors for a small firm in Nashville, which meant I spent most days arguing about tile samples with men who thought exposed brick counted as a personality. I'd also been single for 7 months. Not tragically single, not eating cereal over the sink while staring into the dark single. Just quiet single. The kind where your phone doesn't light up much after 9. The kind where you convince yourself peace and loneliness are basically cousins. I was supposed to be at Maribel's downtown that Friday to meet a client who wanted to turn an old pharmacy into a wine bar. I arrived early because my father had raised me to believe being late was a moral failure, and because I needed a minute in my car to convince myself I didn't look like a substitute geography teacher in my navy suit. That was when I saw her through the restaurant window, Natalie Hart, my ex's mother. She sat alone at a table for two near the front, wearing a deep green dress that made the candlelight look like it had been hired specifically for her. Her silver blonde hair was pinned loosely at the back of her neck, with a few soft pieces falling near her cheeks. She had one hand around a glass of water, the other resting on the table beside a small wrapped gift. And across from her was an empty chair. At first, I told myself not to stare. Natalie was 51, elegant, sharp, and entirely capable of handling an empty chair without help from the man who had once dated her daughter for 4 uncomfortable months. But then I saw the waiter come over. He leaned down with that careful restaurant smile people use when they're about to ask something painful. Natalie looked at her phone, smiled too quickly, shook her head. The waiter took away the untouched second menu. Something in my chest tightened. I had met Natalie 2 years earlier at her daughter Lila's birthday dinner. Lila and I were already cracking at the seams by then, though neither of us had admitted it. She wanted bigger rooms, louder weekends, people who photographed their brunch before eating it. I wanted quiet kitchens, old jazz records, and a woman who didn't make affection feel like a performance review. Natalie had been the only person at that dinner who noticed I was miserable. She'd sat beside me while Lila held court at the other end of the table and said, "You look like a man pretending to enjoy goat cheese." I'd laughed so hard I nearly choked. After that, we'd had this odd little friendship at the edges of family events. Nothing inappropriate, nothing even close. Just looks across rooms when someone said something ridiculous. Quick conversations while carrying dishes. A shared understanding that we were both, in different ways, standing slightly outside the party. After Lila and I ended, I didn't see Natalie again. I told myself that was proper. I told myself a lot of things that sounded mature because they were safer than admitting I missed her voice. Through the glass, Natalie reached for the wrapped gift, then stopped. Her shoulders lifted once, like she was taking a breath nobody was supposed to notice. That did it. I got out of my car. The hostess smiled when I walked in. "Reservation?" "Not yet," I said, because apparently my mouth had decided to operate without legal counsel. I passed the bar, the soft amber lamps, the low hum of Friday night couples pretending not to listen to each other. Natalie didn't see me until I was beside her table. When she looked up, surprise crossed her face first, then embarrassment. Then something that looked almost like relief, which was worse. "Daniel," she said. "Natalie." Her eyes moved over my suit. "Please tell me you're not my date." "I've been accused of many things," I said, "but never punctual romance fraud." A laugh escaped her before she could stop it. Small, wounded, real. God help me, I liked that laugh too much. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "Client meeting." I glanced at the empty chair. "What are you doing here?" Her fingers tightened around the stem of her water glass. Learning humility, apparently. I hated the man. Who had made her say that? Not in a dramatic, chest-beating way, just quietly, efficiently. "Blind date?" I asked. "Online," she said. "Which is blind date with better lighting and more lies. Do I need to hate him?" "You don't need to do anything." That wasn't the question. Her eyes lifted to mine. There it was again, that little current between us I had always pretended was just friendly warmth. But friendly warmth didn't make a man aware of how close his hand was to a woman's shoulder. Friendly warmth didn't make a restaurant fade slightly at the edges. Natalie looked away first. He texted 20 minutes ago, she said. He got back with his ex. Ouch. Yes, and apparently they're very happy, so I'm also supposed to be inspired. I pulled out the chair across from her but didn't sit. That mattered. I was not going to make her feel cornered. Not tonight. Not ever. Natalie, I said, can I ask you one question? Her expression turned cautious. That depends entirely on the question. I held my hands up. Fair. A waiter passed behind me carrying a plate of scallops. Somewhere near the bar, a woman laughed too loudly. Natalie sat in that green dress with her chin lifted, trying to look untouched by the kind of rejection that lands harder because you made an effort. I wanted to rescue her pride. But more than that, I wanted to sit with her. I wanted to know what perfume she was wearing. I wanted to hear the dry comment she would make about the menu. I wanted, for once, to stop pretending my interest in her was only kindness. So I asked the question, would you let me be the man who was smart enough to show up? Her lips parted. For 1 second, neither of us moved. Then her gaze dropped to the empty chair, back to me, and something changed in her face. Not gratitude, not exactly. Challenge. You understand, she said slowly, that this is wildly inappropriate. Yes. And complicated. Definitely. And if Lila heard about it, she'd set fire to at least 3 group chats. Only 3? She's mellowed. Natalie laughed again, and this time it stayed. It warmed her whole face, made her look less abandoned and more dangerous. I was in trouble. She looked at the chair. You really want to have dinner with your ex-girlfriend's mother? I swallowed. This was the point where a wiser man would make a joke and leave. A cleaner man, a man with fewer quiet regrets. Instead, I said, I want to have dinner with you. The air between us went still. Natalie heard the difference. I could tell by the way her smile softened and her eyes searched mine. Not like she was checking for pity, but like she was checking whether I had finally stopped lying to both of us. Then she reached across the table, picked up the second menu, and slid it toward the empty chair. Sit down, Daniel. I did. And for the next 7 minutes, it almost felt simple. We ordered wine. She teased me for still choosing the cheapest red that didn't sound like a dare. I told her she looked beautiful because she did, and because the night had already crossed too many lines for cowardice to seem useful. Her cheeks colored, but she didn't look away. Careful, she said. A woman my age might believe you. A man my age might hope you do. Her foot brushed mine under the table. Maybe by accident. Maybe not. Then the front door opened, bringing in a burst of cold air and perfume and familiar laughter. Natalie's face changed before I even turned around. I knew that laugh. Lila stood at the hostess stand with 2 friends, phone in hand, staring straight at our table. Her smile disappeared. And then my ex-girlfriend said, loud enough for half the restaurant to hear, Mom, Daniel, what the hell is this? There are several acceptable responses when your ex-girlfriend catches you having wine with her mother. I considered none of them. Instead, I reached for my glass, missed it by half an inch, and knocked my knuckle against the bread plate like a man trying to seduce gravity. Natalie somehow remained perfectly composed. She looked at Lila standing by the hostess stand in a red coat in outrage, then calmly folded her napkin in her lap. Hello, sweetheart, she said. You look cold. Lila blinked. That's what you're going with? I was considering how was parking. One of Lila's friends made a choking noise that might have been a laugh. Lila shot her a look, then marched toward us. The restaurant softened into a blur of curious eyes and lowered voices. I stood as she approached, mostly because my father had also raised me not to sit while a woman was preparing to murder me in public. Daniel, Lila said, like my name tasted expired. Lila. She looked at Natalie. Mom, please explain why you're on a date with my ex-boyfriend. Natalie's fingers stilled on her napkin. For the first time, I saw the hit land. Not because Lila was angry. Natalie could handle anger. It was the way she said date, like the idea of Natalie being desired was embarrassing. like romance had an expiration date and her mother had been caught shoplifting from a younger shelf. I hated that more than I hated the absent online guy. Natalie opened her mouth, but I spoke first. I sat down, I said. She was waiting for someone who didn't show. I asked if I could join her. Lila's eyes narrowed. How noble. Not really. That made Natalie glance at me. I kept my eyes on Lila. I wanted to sit with her. The words were simple. Too simple for the blast radius they created. Lila's face went slack for a second, then tightened. Are you kidding me? No, Natalie said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut cleanly through mine. She looked up at her daughter, and there was hurt there now, but also steel. Daniel's having dinner with me because I invited him to stay. You invited him? Yes. Mom, he's my ex. I'm aware. I met him through you. That is not funny. No, Natalie said. It really isn't. Silence settled around the table. Even the waiter had wisely vanished. Lila's cheeks flushed. This is humiliating. Natalie's expression changed again, and suddenly I saw the whole shape of the wound. The ruined evening, the empty chair, the daughter turning her embarrassment into a verdict. Yes, Natalie said softly. It was. Lila's mouth opened, then closed. For a second, she looked younger, less furious, almost sorry. But pride is a stubborn horse. This is messed up, she said, grabbing her friends with a glance. Whatever this is, don't expect me to be okay with it. Then she turned and walked out, her friends trailing after her like nervous bridesmaids. The door opened, cold air swept in, and she was gone. I sat slowly. Natalie stared at her untouched wine. I'm sorry, I said. She gave a tiny laugh. For dating my daughter? That apology is a bit late. I mean, for this. You didn't do it. I didn't stop it either. Her eyes lifted. Daniel, if you apologize one more time, I'm going to make you eat that decorative lemon. Despite everything, I smiled. There she was, the woman at the edge of the party refusing to be small. Do you want to leave? I asked. She looked toward the door. For a moment, I thought she would say yes, and I told myself I would pay the bill, walk her to her car, and spend the rest of my life wondering what her hand would have felt like in mine. Then Natalie reached for her wine. No, she said. No? I put on shapewear for this evening. Someone is buying me dinner. I laughed, too loud and too relieved. Her mouth curved, but her eyes were bright. Besides, if I leave now, she gets to decide what this was. And what is this? The question slipped out before I could make it charming. Natalie looked at me across the candle. The restaurant noise returned gradually around us, forks and glasses and Friday night murmurs. Her face had softened again, but not into uncertainty. Into honesty. I don't know, she said, but I know what it isn't. What? Pity. I nodded once. Good. And it isn't rebellion. Also good. Her thumb traced the base of her glass. Is it for you? No. Daniel. She said my name like a warning, like a test. I leaned forward, elbows near the table edge, close enough to smell something warm and floral on her skin. I noticed you before I should have, I admitted. Back then. At Lila's birthday dinner. At your house that summer when you burned the burgers and blamed the grill. The grill confessed. I noticed you when you asked me real questions and waited for real answers. I noticed when you laughed. I noticed when you listened. My throat went tight. And when things ended with Lila, part of me was relieved I wouldn't have to pretend not to. Natalie went very still. Outside, headlights slid across the window and disappeared. That's a dangerous thing to say to a woman who has had a very bad night, she whispered. I know. You might be taking advantage of vulnerable circumstances. I thought about that. And? And if you tell me to leave, I will. No argument, no wounded pride. But I'm not going to insult you by pretending I don't want to stay. Her eyes shone, not with tears exactly, but with recognition. Then, under the table, her foot touched mine again. This time, there was no maybe. You were always too earnest, she said. I can try brooding. Please don't. Men your age brewed with craft beer and terrible hats? I grinned. Men my age? Her gaze dropped briefly to my mouth. My pulse forgot its training. Yes, she said. Younger men. Is that a problem? It's a headline. Headlines are often misleading. That sounds like something a man says before becoming a headline. I reached across the table, palm up, not demanding, just offering. Natalie looked at my hand for a long second. Then she placed hers in it. Her fingers were cool, slender, stronger than I expected. The contact moved through me with embarrassing force, a quiet spark in a dark room. I brushed my thumb once over her knuckles and her breath caught. Not much. Enough. She didn't pull away. Dinner arrived after that, and somehow we ate. Not gracefully. We talked around the obvious at first: clients, books, the waiter's heroic refusal to acknowledge the scandal. Then Natalie told me the abandoned date had been her first attempt at seeing someone in nearly 3 years. My divorce was polite, she said, cutting into her salmon, which is another way of saying lonely in formal wear. I set down my fork. I'm sorry. She lifted the lemon with 2 fingers. I shut up. She smiled. I kept thinking I was being mature, not needing too much, not asking for anything inconvenient. Then tonight I sat here with a gift for a stranger and realized I didn't want mature. I wanted to be wanted. The confession landed between us like a match. I squeezed her hand because somewhere between appetizers and salmon, we had started holding hands again. You are, I said. Her eyes met mine. This time she didn't tease, didn't deflect. By you? I swallowed. Yes. The word changed the night. Not fixed it, not simplified it, changed it. After dinner, I walked her outside into the cold. We stood near her car beneath a street lamp, close enough that her shoulder brushed my arm. Neither of us moved away. This is still complicated, she said. I know. My daughter may not speak to me for a while. I know. And I am not a consolation prize for your failed relationship with her. I turned toward her fully. Natalie, you're not consolation anything. She studied me, then stepped closer. Her hand rose to straighten my tie, though it wasn't crooked. Her fingers lingered at my collar. My heart beat so hard I felt ridiculous. One date, she said. Was this not one? Her smile was slow. This was a public incident with appetizers. Then one real date. I choose the place. Of course. And if you panic tomorrow, you call me and say so like an adult. I won't panic. You might. I might, I admitted, but not about wanting you. Her fingers tightened lightly in my tie. For half a second I thought she might kiss me. Instead, she rose on her toes and pressed her lips to my cheek just beside my mouth. Soft, warm, deliberate. When she leaned back, her eyes were bright with nerves and mischief. Good night, Daniel. I stood there like a man who had forgotten language. She got into her car, started the engine, and lowered the window. Oh, she said, and bring better wine opinions next time. Then she drove away, leaving me under the street lamp with her lipstick near my mouth and one impossible thought ringing in my head. Next time. Natalie did not text the next morning. She called. I was standing in my kitchen at 8:17, staring at my phone like it was a bomb with excellent cheekbones, when her name appeared on the screen. I answered too quickly. Good morning. A pause. Then her voice, warm and amused. Were you holding the phone? No. Daniel. Yes. Her laugh slid through me before I'd had coffee. I'm calling, she said, because I promised myself I would act like a grown woman and not spend the day interpreting punctuation. I respect that. Do you? Deeply. I've already drafted 4 versions of a casual text and hated myself during all of them. That's comforting. I live to serve. She was quiet for a second and the silence wasn't awkward. It felt like both of us standing on opposite sides of a door, hands on the knob. Last night was not a mistake, she said. Every muscle in me eased. No, I said. It wasn't. Good. I wanted that said before my daughter calls again, and before I talk myself into behaving. Behaving is overrated, says the man who apologized to a waiter for ordering soup. He looked busy. He was carrying a pepper grinder. It looked heavy. She laughed again, and I leaned back against the counter, ridiculous with relief. Our first real date was set for Sunday afternoon because Natalie said evening felt too cinematic, and brunch felt like we were trying to impress Instagram. She chose a used bookstore in East Nashville with a coffee bar and a cat named Socrates who judged everyone from the mystery section. I arrived 10 minutes early. She arrived 12 minutes early. We found each other just inside the door and both stopped. Natalie wore jeans, ankle boots, and a cream sweater that made her look softer than the woman in the green dress, but no less devastating. Her hair was down today, silver blonde waves brushing her shoulders. I had seen beautiful women before. This was worse. This was beautiful plus knowing. "You're early," she said. "So are you." I was hoping to look casual. I was hoping to look sane. Her eyes traveled over me, gray jacket, black shirt, hands shoved awkwardly in my pockets. "You're close," she said. We ordered coffee. She insisted on paying for hers, then accused me of looking relieved because I feared her independence. I told her I feared nothing except open shelving and people who described rooms as masculine. She smiled into her cup like she was trying not to give me too much too soon. We wandered through the aisles close enough that our shoulders brushed whenever one of us reached for a book. Every accidental touch felt less accidental than the last. At poetry, she pulled a thin blue volume from the shelf. "Do you read poems?" "Only under court order." "Shame. Poetry is useful." "For what?" "Saying impossible things without having to make eye contact." I leaned one shoulder against the shelf. "Is there something impossible you want to say?" Natalie opened the book, scanned a page, and did not look up. "I liked waking up and knowing I would see you." The sentence hit me with more force than any kiss could have. Then she closed the book and slid it back. My voice came out lower. "I liked that too." She glanced at me then, and the air between us tightened. We were standing in a public aisle beside dead poets and a judgmental cat, and still I wanted to touch her with a kind of focus that felt almost impolite. Her phone buzzed. The sound snapped us apart. Natalie looked at the screen, and her face changed. "Lila?" I asked. She nodded. "Third call today. You don't have to answer." "I do, actually." She stepped toward the back corner, but not far enough that I couldn't hear pieces. "Yes, I know you're upset. No, I'm not having this conversation if you keep using that tone. I am your mother, not your property." My chest tightened. Then Natalie went silent, listening. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "I love you. That hasn't changed. But I am allowed to have a life that isn't arranged around your comfort." A long pause. "No, I'm not ending it because you're embarrassed." My breath caught at it. Ending it. As if there was already enough of an it to defend. She hung up a minute later and stood with the phone in her hand, eyes closed. I walked over slowly. "Hey, I'm fine." "You're doing that thing where fine means you might stab a decorative pillow." "I don't own decorative pillows." "Then society is safe." Her mouth trembled with a smile, but her eyes were wet. "She thinks I'm ridiculous." "I don't." "That helps more than it should." "It can help exactly as much as it wants." Natalie looked at me then, really looked, and the vulnerability there made me want to step closer and stay still at the same time. "I don't want to hurt her," she whispered. "I know. But I also don't want to keep teaching her that my feelings are the first thing I should sacrifice." I reached for her hand. This time I didn't hesitate. She looked down as my fingers folded around hers, then back up at me. "I'm not asking you to pick a fight with your daughter," I said. "I'm asking for a chance to know you. If that gets too heavy, we slow down. If you need space, I'll give it. But I'm here because I want you, Natalie. Not because this is dramatic, not because it's forbidden. Because it's you." Her thumb moved over mine. "You say things like that," she said, "and then expect me to browse fiction? I can apologize. Don't you dare." She tugged me gently between two taller shelves into a narrow aisle of old hardcovers where the afternoon light fell in pale stripes across the floor. We were partly hidden, close enough now that I could see the tiny flecks of blue in her eyes. "I'm scared," she said. "Of me?" Of wanting this. Her laugh was breathless. Of wanting anything this much. I lifted our joined hands and kissed her knuckles. Her breath caught. I'm scared too, I admitted. That's annoyingly attractive. Fear? Honesty. I smiled. I'll try to remain marketable. She stepped closer, sweater brushing my jacket. Her free hand settled against my chest, right over my heartbeat. It's racing, she said. You're very close. I noticed. Her eyes dropped to my mouth again, as they had outside the restaurant. This time I didn't let the moment pass. Can I kiss you? The question made her expression soften in a way I would remember for years. Yes, she said. Please. I leaned in carefully, giving her every chance to change her mind. She didn't. Natalie met me halfway. The kiss was gentle at first, almost cautious, a question asked with lips and breath. Then her fingers curled in my shirt and the question became an answer. She tasted like coffee and warmth. Her mouth moved under mine with a quiet confidence that undid me completely. I forgot the bookstore. I forgot Lila. I forgot every sensible reason we should step back. There was only Natalie, her hand against my chest, her body close to mine, the small sound she made when I brushed my thumb along her jaw. When we finally parted, neither of us moved far. Socrates the cat appeared at the end of the aisle and stared at us. Natalie looked over my shoulder. We've been judged. Harshly? Professionally. I laughed, forehead resting lightly against hers. She smiled, and there was shyness in it now, but also decision. That was our first kiss, she said. I noticed. Good. I'd hate for you to miss important plot points. I'm very attentive to narrative structure. Her hand slid from my chest to my lapel. Then pay attention to this one. I want a second date. My heart did something foolish. Name it. Dinner at my house Friday. I went still. Your house? Yes. That feels significant. It is? She lifted her chin, daring me to understand her. I'm tired of acting like I'm doing something shameful. If I invite you in, it's because I choose to. I covered her hand with mine. Then I'll be there. We left the bookstore an hour later with 3 books, 2 coffees to go, and 1 kiss at her car that was less cautious than the first. As I watched her drive away, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Stay away from my mother. I stared at it, then looked up at the empty street where Natalie's car had disappeared. For the first time all weekend, I didn't feel guilt. I felt certainty. Whatever came next, I wasn't walking away just because loving her would be difficult. I didn't show Natalie the message right away, not because I wanted to hide it. Because Friday night, when she opened her front door in a soft black dress and bare feet, all my noble intentions briefly lost consciousness. Her house smelled like rosemary, garlic, and lemon. Jazz played low from somewhere inside. She had her hair pinned up again, but not carefully. A few strands had escaped, as if the evening had already touched her. You're staring, she said. Yes. No defense? I'm comfortable with the evidence. Her smile appeared slowly. Come in before I change my mind. I stepped inside carrying wine that had required actual research, plus flowers I had paid for this time. Natalie took the bouquet and looked at it for a long second. Too much? I asked. No. Her voice softened. No one's brought me flowers in years. That sentence hurt more than it should have. I wanted to say something sweeping, something that would erase every year she'd been made to feel invisible. Instead, I took the flowers from her hands, found a vase on the counter, and filled it while she watched. There, I said, setting them in the center of her kitchen island. Now your house knows. Knows what? That you're being courted. Her eyes lifted to mine. The word hung there between us, old-fashioned and serious. Courted, she repeated. If you'll allow it. Natalie came around the island slowly. You don't have to make this sound noble. I'm not. Aren't you? I leaned back against the counter as she stopped in front of me. Close. Too close for clear thinking. I'm trying to make it sound intentional, I said. There's a difference. Her expression changed at that. The teasing eased away, leaving something vulnerable and bright. I like intentional, she whispered. So do I. She touched my tie, though again, it needed no help. You wore a tie to dinner in my kitchen. You said dinner, I panicked formally. Her laugh warmed the room. Then she kissed me. Not on the cheek this time, not cautious like the bookstore. She rose onto her toes, slid one hand behind my neck, and kissed me like she had decided waiting was overrated. I caught her waist, careful for one breath, then less careful when she pressed closer. She was soft against me, warm through the thin fabric of her dress. My hands settled at her back, and hers tightened in my hair. The kiss deepened, slow and searching, until the oven timer beeped and we both startled apart like teenagers caught in church. Natalie closed her eyes. The chicken is judgmental. I respect its timing and resent it deeply. Dinner was imperfect and perfect. The chicken was a little overdone. The potatoes were excellent. Natalie admitted she had changed outfits 3 times, then threatened me with the carving knife if I looked pleased about it. I admitted I had watched 2 videos about wine pairing and still understood nothing. You studied for me? She asked. I wanted to impress you. You already had. When? She looked at me across the candlelit table. When you asked if you could be the man smart enough to show up. My throat tightened. There are moments in life when desire stops being only physical. It becomes a kind of recognition. A door opening in a house you thought had no more rooms. After dinner, we carried plates to the sink together, shoulders bumping, hands touching in soapy water. She flicked bubbles at me. I accused her of domestic aggression. She laughed so hard she had to grip the counter. Then, while drying a wine glass, I told her about the text. Natalie went still. I showed her my phone. Stay away from my mother. She read it, sighed, and set the towel down. Lila, I assumed. I'm sorry. You warned me she'd set fire to group chats. This is more direct. I can handle direct. Natalie looked tired suddenly. I don't want my daughter to become the villain in my happiness. She doesn't have to be. She thinks I chose you over her. I moved closer, but didn't touch her until she reached for me first. She did. Her fingers found mine near the sink. I raised her after the divorce, she said quietly. Her father traveled. I was the steady one, the available one. I think somewhere along the way she started believing my life existed in the spaces around hers. That's not fair to you. No, but I let it happen. Her smile was sad. It felt like love at the time. It was love, I said. Just not all love should cost you yourself. Her eyes filled. I brushed my thumb over her knuckles, the same way I had in the restaurant, and she leaned into me until her forehead rested against my chest. I held her there in the warm kitchen with dishes in the sink and flowers on the island and the whole complicated world waiting outside the windows. I don't want to be your secret, I said softly. She tilted her face up. You aren't. I also don't want to be a weapon. You aren't that either. Then what am I? Natalie studied me for a long, trembling second. Then she said, a beginning. The word moved through me like light. I cupped her face. Can I tell you something reckless? Please. I wore mascara that can survive consequences. I'm falling for you. Her breath caught. Not fear this time. Wonder. Daniel? I know it's fast. I know it's messy. I know there are 100 reasons to slow down. I swallowed. But I spent 2 years telling myself I only admired you. I'm done lying. She closed her eyes and one tear slipped free. I caught it with my thumb. When she opened them again, she looked unguarded in a way that made my chest ache. I'm falling too, she whispered, and I'm terrified. I kissed her then, because there was no better answer. She kissed me back with a softness that felt like trust, not a promise that nothing would hurt us, a promise that we would not hurt each other carelessly. We ended up on the couch with her legs tucked beside mine, my arm around her shoulders, her head resting against me. We talked for an hour about ordinary things, my worst apartment, her disastrous attempt at pottery, the fact that she hated reality dating shows but watched them for sociological concern. It felt like what I'd been missing before I had language for it. Near midnight, her phone lit up on the coffee table. Lila. Natalie stared at it until it stopped. Then it rang again. I should answer, she said. I started to move. I'll give you privacy. She caught my hand. Stay. So I stayed. She put the phone on speaker. Mom? Lila's voice cracked, stripped of its earlier fury. Natalie sat up. I'm here. Are you with him? A pause. Natalie looked at me. Then she took my hand, lacing her fingers through mine where the phone could not see but both of us could feel it. Yes, she said. Daniel is here. Lila exhaled sharply. I need to talk to you, in person. Natalie's grip tightened. Tonight? Tomorrow, Lila said. Just you and me. Natalie looked at me again, and I nodded. Not because I was stepping back, because she deserved room to be a mother without proving anything to me. All right, Natalie said. Tomorrow. After she hung up, the house seemed too quiet. She sounded upset, I said. She is upset. Do you want me to go? Natalie turned toward me, and the answer was in her eyes before she spoke. No. She stood, tugged me up with her, and walked me to the door anyway. At the threshold, she slipped both arms around my waist and held on. I need to talk to my daughter, she said against my shoulder. I know, but I don't want to end us. I pressed a kiss to her hair. Then don't. She leaned back. That simple? No, but simple enough for tonight. Natalie smiled faintly, then kissed me at the door, slow and deep and certain. When she pulled away, her hand rested over my heart. Come back tomorrow evening, she said. I will. And Daniel? Yeah. If I get scared, remind me I chose this. I kissed her once more, softly. You chose us. Her eyes shone. I drove home under a cold moon with her flowers still blooming in my mind, believing we had survived the hardest part. The next afternoon, Natalie called me. She was crying, and all she said was, Daniel, Lila told me something I should have known years ago. I was in my car before Natalie finished the sentence. Where are you? I asked. My house, she said, voice breaking. But Daniel, don't come rushing over like I'm already rushing. Of course you are. I can slow down dramatically at stop signs if that helps. A shaky laugh came through the phone and it nearly undid me. When I reached her place, Lila's car was still in the driveway. For one awful second, I wondered if I should leave. If my presence would turn a mother-daughter wound into a war. Then the front door opened. Natalie stood there with red eyes, arms wrapped around herself. Behind her, Lila sat on the sofa, pale and exhausted, a mug of untouched tea in her hands. Natalie didn't say anything. She just stepped into me. I held her on the porch, one hand at the back of her head, the other around her waist. She trembled once, then steadied. I'm sorry, she whispered. For what? For making you walk into this. I pulled back enough to see her face. Natalie, I walked in the night I asked for that chair. Her eyes filled again, but this time she smiled. Inside, Lila wouldn't look at me at first. I sat in the armchair, not beside Natalie, not too close. This was their room before it was mine. Finally, Lila spoke. When you dated me, she said, staring at her tea, I knew you liked her. The words landed quietly. Natalie flinched. I didn't answer fast enough. Lila looked up then, and there was no theatrical anger left in her. Just hurt. Old hurt. I was 26 and still competing with my mother, she said. How pathetic is that? Not pathetic, Natalie said softly. Yes, Mom, it was. Lila swallowed. You were always the one people trusted. The one who made rooms calm. The one Dad still called when his life fell apart. And then Daniel came along and I could feel it. He laughed differently with you. My chest tightened. Lila turned to me. I didn't love you the way I should have. I liked that you were stable, kind, adult. And I liked that you chose me. I nodded slowly because anything else would have been a lie. But when I saw you with her at Maribel's, Lila continued, it wasn't just weird. It confirmed the ugliest thing I'd ever thought about myself. That even my boyfriend would have picked my mother if he had the choice. Natalie made a small sound. Lila, I said, I was wrong to stay in that relationship when I knew it wasn't right. She gave me a tired smile. Yeah, you were. Fair. But I didn't choose your mother instead of you back then, I said. I didn't choose anyone. I was a coward with good manners. Natalie looked at me, pained and tender. Lila wiped her cheek. I know. I think I know that now. Natalie moved to sit beside her daughter. Sweetheart, I never wanted you to feel compared to me. I compared us all by myself. I'm sorry I didn't see it. I hid it well. No. Natalie took her hand. I was used to being needed. I didn't always ask what kind of needing it was. They cried then, both of them, not dramatically. Just the quiet kind of crying that comes when people finally stop defending the wound and start touching it. I stood. I'm going to step outside. Natalie looked up. Daniel, you don't need an audience for this part. I smiled gently. I'll be on the porch. I sat outside for nearly 40 minutes, listening to the muffled rise and fall of their voices through the door. I thought about leaving, not because I wanted to, but because love sometimes looks too much like disruption from the outside. Then the door opened. Lila stepped out. She wrapped her coat tighter around herself and sat beside me. I don't know how to be okay with this yet, she said. I understand. But I don't want to punish her for being happy. I looked at her. That's a good start. She sighed. If you hurt her, I'll ruin your credit score. Despite everything, I laughed. Specific. I've matured past group chats. Noted. She glanced toward the door. She's different with you. Different how? Like she remembers she's allowed to want things. That hit me hard enough that I had to look away. Lila stood after a moment. Don't make her small. I won't. And don't act noble when you're just in love. It's annoying. I looked up at her. She rolled her eyes. Yes, Daniel, everyone knows. Then she went to her car, leaving me on the porch with my heart pounding like a teenager's. Natalie came out a minute later, hugging herself against the cold. She left? She asked. After threatening my financial future. That means she's healing. I stood. Are you okay? No. She stepped closer. But I think I will be. I reached for her hand. Do you want space tonight? She looked at our joined fingers. Then she shook her head. I have had enough space in my life. So I went inside with her. We didn't talk much. We made tea neither of us drank. We sat on the couch, her curled into my side, my cheek resting against her hair. Nothing was fixed. Not completely. But something had opened. At the door later, she caught my sleeve. I love you, she said. No warning, no soft landing. Just the truth. I went still. Natalie smiled nervously. This is where you say something unless you've decided to fake your death. I cupped her face and kissed her, slow and deep, until her hands gripped my shirt and her breath shook against mine. Then I rested my forehead against hers. I love you too. Her eyes closed. The relief on her face was so beautiful it almost hurt to look at. 6 months later, I still bought the wrong wine sometimes. But Natalie kept me anyway. Lila didn't magically become thrilled about us. Life isn't that tidy. But she started coming over for Sunday dinners again. The first time she found my jacket hanging on Natalie's chair, she stared at it, sighed, and said, Fine, but if he starts calling himself my stepdad, I'm moving to Canada. Natalie nearly dropped the salad bowl laughing. By spring, my toothbrush had migrated to Natalie's bathroom, followed by my books, then my favorite pan, then me. Not officially at first, just one overnight that turned into 3, then a drawer, then a key she pressed into my palm while pretending it was no big deal. It's practical, she said. It has a little heart keychain. It came that way. It says mine. She took the key back, kissed me, and dropped it into my hand again. Practical. A year after that night at Maribel's, I took Natalie back to the same restaurant. Same front window, same candlelight, no empty chair. She wore the green dress again because she is braver than anyone I know. And halfway through dinner, she reached across the table for my hand. Do you ever regret asking me that question? She said. I looked at her, really looked at her. The silver in her hair. The laugh lines I loved. The woman who had stopped apologizing for being wanted. Not once. Outside after dinner, snow began to fall in soft, scattered flakes. Natalie lifted her face to it, smiling like the world had surprised her kindly. I pulled her close under the street lamp where I had once stood stunned by a kiss on the cheek. This time, she kissed me like coming home, and when she slipped her cold hand into mine, there was no scandal in it anymore. Only us. What would you have done if you walked into a restaurant and saw your ex's mom abandoned on a date? Would you have sat down and asked that one question? Have you ever experienced something even close to this? Tell your story in the comments. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.